The season opener throws up many surprises, many new cars hitting the heights from the off. This is the Donington Park Review.
Hello and welcome back to the British Touring Car Podcast. We are bringing you updates live from the circuit today.
Indeed.
We've seen race 1 and 2 so far, and we'll bring you race 3 a little bit later. But yeah, after yesterday's excitement in the race to pole, it chucked up a slightly shuffled grid for race 1, didn't it?
It did indeed. So if you haven't listened to our podcast on the Saturday stuff, you need to go back and listen to that, because we'll be splitting the two, because there's now all the action on the Saturday as well. But it did mean that Rowbottom started from pole for race 1. As many comments pointed out yesterday, Jason Plater Racing effectively won the 2026 season yesterday before racing will have been turned. So we were very keen to see how he got on in full race trim, weren't we?
Yeah, I think they got their fair share of coverage yesterday with everything that went on, and the cameras pointed at them.
And we got our fair share of no wheel for maybe pointing out that there might be some teething issues at Jason Plater Racing over the season. However, all of that would be discussed and more. We've had a nice day so far. Weather has been good. Racing has been excellent. I will say that any concerns over the season perhaps not living up to expectations because of smaller grids, etc., if the first 2 races go by, it's going to be a cracking season of racing. So
certainly in the touring cars anyway. The sport packages haven't been brilliant so far, but a little bit of action.
Yeah, but I think that will be very track dependent to how they perform.
Yep.
And it is a shame to see such a small Porsche main challenge grid as well. The sprint race is probably double, if not treble the size of it, which is a concern in many ways.
It is.
Right, shall we jump straight into race 1 then?
Let's do that.
So Ingram and Rowbottom on the front row, and it appeared that Rowbottom had forgotten how to start the car because it just went backwards off the line.
Yeah, speculation is that the clutch was a little slippy. Teething issues possibly. And yes, Ingram's start was monster.
Demon, yeah.
Really, especially considering how close there were a certain BMW behind him as well.
Absolutely. Rainford will get up to 3rd off the start, showing exactly, as you just said there, how good the rear-wheel drive is still going to be off the starting block. Rowbottom shuffled back down to 3rd, and Ingram basically won the race on lap 2. He was so far ahead, he was in a different postcode, wasn't
he? The speed and control that he had, especially throughout the whole of the race, was almost second to none. A very dominant performance from him.
Towards the back of the grid, it was all about how far could Sutton get. Of course, he was starting in the back of the field due to his indiscretion, shall we say, incident in the race to pole sprint race thing. But by lap 3, he was all the way up to 10th, so showing that any problems yesterday have been thoroughly put to bed, and he was back on one of those Ash Sutton charges.
It was interesting to hear his interview with Louise afterwards, saying that they kind of had goals of where he wanted to be by the end of a certain lap, and I think they said by the end of lap 1 that he needed to be in 12th and he was in 13th, but he made a decent amount of progress after that anyway.
Yeah, and if you're ever interested in watching how you can overtake in a car, this lap or these opening laps are one to go back and watch, because he was doing moves on the outside, on the inside, cutbacks, feints. It was basically every trick that Ash Sutton has ever written was on show here, and was carving his way through the field.
Granted, against drivers that are of maybe a lesser quality compared to Sutton himself, but he still had to make those moves count and make them cleanly as well, because we know how difficult it can be in that mid-pack.
Absolutely, but some of the drivers he had passed during that, I take what you're saying entirely, but when he gets to the mid-pack, he then gets past Chilton, Shedden in quick succession, and Moffat, setting the fastest lap by lap number 7. Chilton, conversely, was struggling and falling back through the field, having a good race with Dexter Patterson at some point, who looked very solid in the Audi on his first time out in race.
All Audis have looked solid so far, surprisingly so for some people. So yeah, Dobble was looking on top form as well.
Some people includes us, you do know that. Yeah, okay. Then we saw the first major incident of the race. Cook lost it into the final chicane, sent him fully off and into the barrier. It looked initially as if he dropped it, perhaps oversteered, but it was confirmed to be a puncture.
Yeah, almost looked like he went a little bit too deep and lost the rear end, but as you say, a rear left puncture put pay to that. Don't know whether it was causation or correlation. But yeah, he ended up in the barrier coming out of the final chicane and had to be recovered.
Yeah, and by the time we got to the safety car board, Sutton had recovered himself up to 6th. So
is that all?
No, that's all. Yeah, only 6th. The restart occurred and was fairly standard. Everyone behaved pretty well, and Ingram just basically shot away. That was effectively it. By
Plenty of boost.
Well, as we'll come to, we were sat at the bottom of the craners, sort of coming out of the old hairpin, and by the time he got to us, he was already 6 car lengths clear.
Good several car lengths clear.
Good management.
He always seems to nail a restart, and it helps with drivers battling behind him and stuff like that, and he can concentrate on just looking forward, but he just does seem to have this knack of building a gap on that opening lap.
Further behind, Sutton was able to get past Moffat, basically just drove around him. I imagine it was a push to pass, or sorry, that's a crime. TTB. A TTB pass, shall we say. And Dobble would then get himself into third with a good move on Rainford, which Sutton was able to, I keep saying Sutton, I'm not being sponsored by him, but he was able to follow through and get himself up to fourth. We then saw Collard run into the pits with an issue, which is a bit of a shame for him. He hadn't been running particularly well in the opening race, I think it's fair to say. So I think that car perhaps had a few, well, should I say it, teething problems, which is not unexpected given the lack of running that car did over the testing period.
No, exactly.
Smiley was then run out wide of Coppice and shuffled right to the back of the pack. A really disappointing race for restart overall. It just didn't seem to have the pace. They weren't on it yesterday. They haven't really been on it today. A slow start to the season for those guys.
No, it seems to be battling down the back, both of them, with the likes of Selby, Hamilton, Buxton as well. Those drivers that are less experienced or not as quick in the series.
Yep, we then saw Rowbottom given a final warning for track limits. We'll come back to that later. And Sutton was kind of slowing down towards the end of the race. It gave Rainford a chance to nip back round of a brave move on the outside of the craners, which Sutton was able to get back by a few corners later. But it was weird. He came round to us and suddenly he was right back in the pack with them all and just seemed to have maybe had a little slide, missed a gear, one of those things, and just sort of, or of course, probably used his boost and used the best of his tyres as well. Yeah. On that charge. Doble was then able to get into second through the chicane, which is a really good move by him. Excellent bit of racing. He looks so at home in that Audi already.
Yeah, and I don't know whether it's just sort of like a complete setup and being comfortable with how it drives already, or whether it was just knowing when to use the boost at the right points and saving a little bit towards the end of the race. We'll get into race 2 where he struggled with the lack of boost, certainly. Yeah,
absolutely. Any issue that one may have felt that Sutton might have had seemed to have corrected itself, because towards the end of the race he was right on the back of Daniel Rowbottom, and into the last lap he really started to put the pressure on, and then got the call he didn't need to, because Moffat hadn't kept it on the grey stuff. Rowbottom hadn't kept it on the grey stuff.
No, final track limits warning came to him, and he was banged with a penalty, which Sutton got told about on the last lap. Otherwise, I think he would have probably have had a dive into the final chicane, and knowing Sutton, he would have probably have made it nicely, but he didn't have to, and he knew it at that point. So just coming in behind Rowbottom across the line meant that he got a podium.
Absolutely. So overall, race 1 was a particularly good race. There was lots of shuffling in and around the pack without too many incidents to really talk about. The incidents came after the race.
Yes.
So as you've touched upon, Rowbottom was given a 10-second penalty for his track limits indiscretions, which relegated him all the way down to 12, was it?
Yeah, there were discrepancies, shall we say, over the roller going underneath Mikey Doble's car. And then the biggest one of all, which was found out a little later on, was the overboosting suffered by Mr. Tom Ingram. Race winner would be disqualified from the classification.
Yes, Adam Morgan was also given a 5-second penalty for a, quote, lesser indiscretion, which makes very little sense to me. Okay, quickly on these penalties then. I feel sorry for Rowbottom. I think 10 seconds is too harsh a penalty for track limits. I think 5 is probably about right. I know he had multiple warnings. I get that.
My argument against that is you get sort of like 3 chances.
Yeah.
And drivers, although they don't like to do it, they know how to run within their limits.
Yes, I get that. But I also think to myself, has he gained 10 seconds by doing that? No. Therefore, is it slightly over it? The rules are the rules, and you're absolutely right. He's been given the warning. It doesn't come as a surprise. You know that the crew would have been on the radio telling him the board would be out. Yep. I get all of that. I just think that fundamentally 10 seconds seems a little bit harsh based on what the crime is. Given that Ingram was out of his grid slot yesterday and only got 5 seconds, to me, that is a bigger indiscretion and possible bigger gain than...
Do you reckon?
I reckon so, yeah.
Okay.
I reckon so. I reckon because you can just...
I think track limits across a race is a bigger indiscretion because you can gain more time through it. Ingram being, 10 centimetres maybe in front of his grid box is not going to gain you that much.
No, but I also think that there are more factors at play to how you could have potentially fall foul of track limits. You could have a slightly loose rear end, or you could hit oil, or we've seen before where a car's been run wide and still given the track limits warning for that. Ingram has got... What I'm saying is that you don't necessarily have total control about if your car stays on the track or not. You have got total control about if you're in your grid box or not. Yeah, and it's fine to disagree. I just think fundamentally I don't like the idea that that's worth 10 seconds. I also don't like the fact that a mechanic on the grid late gives you a drive-through. That to me is a far lesser crime than either of those two.
That should be like a team fine or something like that. So it's more down to the team than the driver.
It's what I mean. I'm not massively fond of how the penalties are. However, I will accept that they are written down and everybody knows them at the start of the season. What I can't understand, because I haven't read the regs fully because I'm not a complete sado and I have got a life outside it, is that I don't understand how Ingram can be overboosting so badly that it means he disqualifies, but Morgan's is an indiscretion that can be slapped with a 5-second penalty. And also, I'll come back to the point of row bottom.
I know what you're about to say. Go on.
That to me gives you more advantage than track limits does. If you're overboosting the car, that gives you, in my opinion, more advantage than the track limits, because we're not talking about being able to cut corners here because of the way the corners work. I understand if you're at Monaco Grand Prix and you come up the tunnel and you straight line that chicane, that is quite a big indiscretion. That is quite a big advantage. I get that. But I'd argue in this scenario where you can't do that and you're basically just either running wide or narrowing the court.
I would say confuses the issue further is the fact that, and it was mentioned in the race to pole yesterday, is that sort of like overboosting should sort of automatically cancel itself out across the lap. So if you sort of like press it too early or have it on for too long, then it sort of like tries to readjust itself.
Yeah, so I don't really know how Ingram's managed to do it so badly that he's then disqualified, but Morgan's...
I mean, he was bloody quick.
He was bloody quick, but he was bloody quick yesterday.
Yeah, I know.
So I just don't really understand how that works. I don't really understand how you can have different levels of it. However, it did give us a final standing, whether we like it or not. And it did mean that Mikey Doble won the race, which is an incredible achievement for both Mikey, but also for the PMR team. New car, went for a lot last season. I think that's the F4s in the background. Did you hear those? To win a race on your first time out in the series in a new car is sublime. I don't care that it came through a disqualification.
Yeah, and he won't either.
No, I know this should use that as a branch to beat him with. He was the first legally finishing car, and that's what matters.
Just
with
that roller going.
With the roller. Sutton came from the back of the grid second, just what Sutton does, I guess. Rainford, surprising perhaps for us going into the weekend podium, but actually raced really well and got himself to third on the podium. Dan Camish finished fourth. Gordon Shedden fifth, much better day for Laser Tools from yesterday so far. Moffat in sixth, really solid result for him. Dexter in seventh. Fantastic. He's looked really good today.
3 Audis in the top 7 in the first race of the season.
And they look so at home in those cars.
Exactly. Adam Weaver must be off his trolley happy sort of thing with that result.
Aaron Taylor-Smith 8th. This one passed him by. Chilton recovered to 9th, which is quite impressive because at one point he was far down towards the back. So
yeah, he seems to be free-falling through the field.
Absolutely. Adam Morgan with his penalty would finish in 10th. Daniel Rowbottom with his penalty finished 11th. Perhaps they didn't get everything right from the start then, Darryl De Leon finished 12th. James Dorling up to 13th. Second the Jack Sears. The Jack Sears was won by Patterson. Sam Osborne, who is eligible for the Jack Sears, we'll cover that another time, is in 14th. Lewis Selby rounded out the point scoring places, getting his point on debut in 15th. In terms of independent winner, that also went to Mikey Doble. And as we just intimated there, the Jack Sears winner went to Dexter Patterson.
Yes, quite.
Any other thoughts to say on race 1?
Race 1 was a really good opener for the season, I think.
Yes, agreed.
A race that will show everyone, even new viewers out there, if you are new to the series, what the touring cars can be like.
Yep, agreed.
It had nearly everything, apart from a little bit of weather. But apart from that, yeah, this is what is to come for the season, hopefully.
Absolutely. I will now say that I will stop making sarky comments about Plato racing. It's just that, I think yesterday was a little bit of an overreaction about. It was a great day for them on Saturday. Don't get me wrong. However, not to say we were right, but these first two races have proved, as we'll get on to in a minute, to be exactly the sort of teething problems that we felt might happen. And you could point to say we thought the same about PMR, and that hasn't happened. Absolutely hasn't happened yet. But these are always the risks with new cars, new teams.
They are. Shall we get into race 2 then?
Yeah, let's jump straight in.
So, as we probably might have expected, Rainford starting right up near the front with rear-wheel drive, managed to take the lead going into turn 1. However, Sutton was on the fight back and cut back coming out of turn 1 to lead going down the Craners.
Yeah, I mean, this is right.
A little nudge, wasn't it?
That's right on the limit for me. So I think that Sutton has misjudged the speed of Rainford coming out of the corner. And in trying to get the cut back, he has hit Rainford's rear bumper. Not so much that
it's unsettled the car, I would say.
I'd say it's unsettled, if not completely unhindered.
Yes.
If not completely hindered the car, sorry.
Yep.
It's one of those that is probably just on the ragged edge in terms of what race control like to see. At time of recording, it hasn't been stripped from him. I don't think it will be. I mean, it's one of those that he's not. I think had he got that slightly more misjudged, we could have seen Rainford off, and that would have potentially led into something. I think otherwise this was just about on the cusp.
Yeah, on the limit.
Good name for a YouTube series.
Exactly. Ingram had issues before the race even started, however. Coming round on the formation lap to the grid, however you want to call it.
Sprint pole.
He had to come into the pits, obviously from starting at the back anyway, had to weave his way through a couple of cars.
And a marshal who decided, or not a marshal, a pit crew member who decided to step in front of the car, which was fun for him.
And basically had a non-start due to an alternator issue. These teething problems happen to even well-established teams.
Yeah, I mean, with what would then go on to happen, particularly after race 1 for Sutton as well. I'm not saying the championship's over. I do hyperbole too much, but it's a seismic gap already that he's starting a big disadvantage now.
Yeah, he is. Chilton was also having issues in the partner car, should I say. He went off down the Craners, looked like he just got pushed wide onto the marbles, no one's fault, no contact or anything like that, and went skating off onto the grass, a little bit through the gravel, destroyed one of those advertising hoardings, but luckily didn't collect anyone at the old hairpin.
Did his best to take out Collard as he came back on. But you're right, managed to avoid everybody. Yeah, one of those things, first lap bunching, concertina and down the Craners, that stuff happens. Yep.
And as we saw them all come out from the old hairpin, we noted that Buxton was very slow coming out of there. And then following that, up on the replay on the TV screens, we saw that Nick Hamilton had a spin at Redgate and was backwards into the gravel. Now, he started at the back near Buxton going slow. Did two of them come together? We'll never know.
Well, we might do once they put penalties up on the website.
Yeah. But from the replays that we've seen, we haven't seen anything clear or clinical to say that those two had come together. But Buxton was very slow and had to come into the pits at the end of that lap. At the end of lap 2, safety car, because of Hamilton being in the gravel. So safety car was out. End of lap 2, under the safety car. Rowbottom had to come into the pits with an issue, straight into the garage.
Straight out the car, straight into the truck.
No hesitation. Pulled it up. They pushed it back in. They put it straight up on the quick jacks, and he was out and gone. Not 100% sure what's caused this issue, but these issues will happen.
An issue at Plato Racing? That's none of my business.
We then had a safety car restart on lap 5, and it was a very equal restart across the board before on lap 6 Camish went down the inside at the old hairpin to go past Double nicely.
Doble, we get complaints, come on. But yes,
go past Doble nicely, nice and cleanly as well.
Yes, good move.
A clinical move.
Good move. Doble really struggled in this race.
He did. Now, having won effectively the race 1, he only had 2 laps of TTB. Although he had run the soft tyre in race 1, so he was on the medium, the preferred race tyre. But he then got shuffled out by Shedden the next lap. Shedden went around the outside of him into the old hairpin, and then further shuffled out by Morgan, De Leon, Patterson, and Aaron Taylor-Smith.
Yeah.
And I don't know whether it was just he couldn't get back into the flow of it, or he was really affected by it for some reason, and the car looks.
Yeah, the car
almost.
again. You don't know if they would have made any setup changes. You'd have thought not, given how it went in race one, but they may have well made a few tweaks here or there, and or not, he might be nursing a small issue with temps
possibly,
or anything like that. You know, we won't know that until the next series of On the Limit comes out.
Yeah, so by the end of lap 8, Doble had been shuffled down quite far, which was a little bit of a shame considering how well he'd paced in race 1 as well.
Yeah, but I mean, one man's loss was another man's gain. Both Moffat and Patterson were going very well in reverse, and I think it'd be reassuring for everyone at PMR is that Doble or Moffat is probably going to be the lead driver. You can make arguments for either or. I think personally, I think it's Doble, but I think you can make arguments. However, it'd be very reassuring for everyone at PMR that okay, Doble's struggling a little bit. Moffat is absolutely got this nailed to where he needs to be. Patterson's doing the same thing. Points in the independents. What more do you want?
You talk about Patterson. Him and Leon managed to slip past Morgan going up into McLean's on lap 9. Again, another clean move, and from Patterson, very opportunistic as well. Good. Morgan had been pushed out wide with De Leon going down the inside, and he just made the most of it, basically.
Absolutely agree. Yep.
At this point, Sutton was very comfortable out front.
He'd won the race.
Seriously comfortable.
Yeah. He was thinking what he was going to say to the Wheeze afterwards.
Yeah, exactly. The race had died down. They'd all settled into their roundabout positions that they wanted to be. Rainford was comfortably in second, Camish in third. Although Cook, who obviously had that incident in race 1, was really struggling to make any progress, and was only up to about 13th, sort of like halfway into the race.
Yeah, I don't know.
Considering his pace in race 1, up till that point they had the issue.
Yeah,
I'd have thought he'd have made more progress.
I don't know whether this is just what normal progress looks like, and we've been slightly gaslight's the wrong word, but you know what I mean. That Sutton is spoiled by Sutton and what he's able to achieve. Obviously, we didn't get to see what Ingram was able to do because of his issue. I don't know if that's just what a fairly. I mean, he's still up 7 places.
Yeah, I suppose, but it didn't feel like he was obviously making the progress that Sutton had done.
No, I understand that. I understand your point. I do understand your point.
The pace that he showed yesterday as well in the race to pole and in the first race this morning, up until that point, just looked promising for that team.
No, I do agree with that point. I just wonder whether we can't judge everybody's fight backs through the field based on what is one of
Sutton and Ingram.
Yeah, exactly. Two, for want of a better word, freaks of the sport. Yeah, they are just insanely good.
Camish did then start to close in on Rainford and managed to complete a pass on him on lap 16 into the old hairpin, very similar to the sort of pass that he made on Mikey. And then Rainford seemed to have issues and started falling through the pack. I don't know whether it was tyres going off towards the end.
My guess is going to be tyre going off, personally.
But then Shedden passed him into Redgate, and then Moffat and De Leon went through down at the old hairpin as well.
Shedden looked good this race. Looked like he had a fair bit of spice, because as soon as he got past, he immediately set off after Camish. And actually, he never really put Camish under any great pressure. However, he closed the gap fairly quickly and just ran out of time really to make anything impressionable. But a podium for, well, I've jumped ahead a little bit, but a podium for Shedden, I don't think either of us would have predicted that after the race to pole stuff yesterday.
No, certainly not. It did look as if those drivers that finished well in the first race really then struggled with their tyres, apart from Sutton, which we kind of come to expect nowadays. Collard had made decent progress from the back. He managed to get up to 8th overall, but it really was Sutton's race and Sutton's race to lose, and that's exactly what he didn't do. Comfortable.
So should we go quickly through the final positions for race 2 then? So as you say, Sutton won comfortably from Dan Camish, Shedden on the podium and the leading independent driver for that race. Moffat 4th, great result for him and PMR. They look really, really strong. De Leon had a really good second half of that race and got himself back up through the field.
Did quietly well as well, just kept his own business and didn't get into any sort of conflict with anyone, just passed people naturally.
Yep, agreed. Rainford finished 6th overall, so was able to stop the rot, and that's still a decent result overall. Patterson remained 7th, look, back-to-back 7th, excellent results for him. Collard up to 8th, as you say. Morgan 9th, Cook recovered to 10th, so a not bad recovery from both those drivers. Aaron Taylor-Smith down to 11th, Smiley 12th, Chilton 13th, Doble finishing 14th, Selby getting further points, finishing 15th from Osborne, Dorlin, Buxton, Rowbottom, obviously didn't get out. Dorling and Smiley have been disappointing so far. I think it's fair to say the car hasn't had the pace that I had thought it would do.
I think will probably have what it seems like at the moment, an ongoing season battle with Osborne and Selby from Napa, it feels like, and maybe you can sprinkle Hamilton and Buxton into there. I certainly think they're going to be the drivers that are down the back this season.
Absolutely. So ball number 8 has been pulled out, which puts, who did I say that puts on pole? Collard from Patterson. So it'll be interesting there. We've then got 2 fast starting Beamers just behind that. So be interesting to see what that does. It's hard to look past the BMW just because I think they will get into the lead early.
And their race pace in the first 2 races have seemed quite strong.
However, I did say to him at the end of race 1 that I think Patterson wins a race this season, and it would be pretty cool if that happened now.
Imagine the Audis winning 2 races in the first.
Yeah, absolutely.
Jeez, right. We'll bring you up to race or up to speed with race 3 next. Right then, race 3, and what a race 3 it was. It was possibly one for the ages. It was certainly a classic race 3 with plenty of toing and froing, I think I should call it.
Yeah, it certainly felt like almost a race 3 from the end of a season, insofar as there was a lot of action, a lot of moves, a lot of people going up and then down and up and then down, a lot of rubbing.
Damage.
Yeah, yeah. I think it's fair to say that pretty much every car would have finished with a scuff mark or 2.
Yeah, so De Leon probably the worst of those scuff marks.
Yeah, we'll get into that. So at the start of the race, no Nick Hamilton on the lap to the grid. He would start in the pit lane with an issue, and Rowbottom had a misfire on his car on the way to the grid, which meant that mechanics were working on that with certain anxious faces during the start to race 3. Again, these are the teething problems that one would expect of a new car, a new team. We've seen it across the grid today. I know that Audi have had a really good day, but actually Doble won race 1 and had a difficult race 2 and 3.
Virtue haven't been immune to it either.
Virtue have been immune to it.
Their difficulties today.
Napa have had some good results, but have also had, I think they've had a few problems over the weekend as well, I think it's fair to say. So yeah, this is what you expect. But Rowbottom was able to get the start and was able to race fairly, I'd say fairly unhampered, it appeared from the side. He will probably fairly argue that it was impeding his progress through the field rather. However, from the sidelines, there was no obvious problem with it.
No, it certainly wasn't as quick as he probably looked earlier in the day. But with the difficulties that he had with race 2, it's not unexpected.
No. I think the start was quite an interesting one because we all kind of expected the BMWs to do what they've done for the whole other 2 races and the sprint race yesterday and sort of get away from the start. But Collard did really well. He nailed his start, helped slightly by the fact that Dexter bogged down alongside him, which blocked a route through one of the BMWs. However, Collard got his start absolutely nailed and was well ahead.
Yeah, still leading when he came round to where we were viewing the final race between Coppice and McLean's. And I was a little surprised to see him still there. Those BMWs, we know how mighty they are off the line. And I really thought they were going to swamp him. Yeah,
but he did really well to hold it off. Bit further back, Selby got his sort of first real experience of what a BTC race 3 is all about, getting spun round. Getting spun out of Hollywood into Redgate and sent across the grass, able to rejoin, but that was his race pretty much gone from there. Difficult one. We've only seen a replay or 2. It's hard to really see if there's a mistake or a culprit for it, or if it is, as you just alluded to there, your typical first lap bunching of a race 3.
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah, we saw Rainford then get into the lead with a great late move at the old hairpin. It looked like he caught Ricky Cole, to be honest with you.
Yeah, it was a really nice, clean move, clinical. And yeah, there was a big gap on the inside, which I thought Ricky may cover, especially with his fighting talk that he gave to Louise before the race. But no, Rainford made it through nice and cleanly. But
he couldn't stay there for long because on the very next lap, Collard sort of gave Rainford a taste of his own medicine with a great move himself at turn 1, taking a late dive to the inside, and then the wily old fox that was Sutton, who had managed to get himself to 3rd by this point, was then able to make it a 3-car battle down the Craners, and these then basically fought for half a lap in 1, 2, 3, which was fantastic to watch.
Yeah, we saw a lot of moves, late breaking moves down into
Mm.
Redgate today, and down to the old hairpin. And it did seem like that back end of the track, a lot of cars were able to follow side by side, which is really nice to see because it gives sort of like twos and fros between who's going to come out of the corner in ahead or behind, and makes for a really good day of racing.
Yeah, as you said, it was exactly that, because just behind him, Camish did a similar quick dive down the inside of Dexter Patterson at the Craners to snatch fourth. I think I mean, I do hyperbolic and I do sort of recency bias, but I don't remember seeing so much action through the Craners and Old Hairpin as we've seen today for a while. Not at the sharp end of the grid necessarily. It seemed today that a lot of moves are being teed up through that section to complete as you went through McLean's, which is good.
Do you think that's because of how they've got TTB set up this year, with having to use 5 seconds at a time, so effectively you get 4 lots of it, rather than just using these snippets of power?
Yeah, I'm not sure yet whether that's going to be a good thing. I need more data. I need to see it more action, because it's turning a little bit more into DRS than it is tactical, because if you can only use 5 seconds at a time, the chances are that you're all going to use it in the same sort of place. Particularly here at Donington, you start, finish straight before the chicane, out the Craners are 3 obvious places to use, aren't they?
It's going to be fairly similar for somewhere like Snetterton as well. With the 2 long straights that you've got, it's going to be a little more difficult for places like Knock Hill and Alton and stuff like that, because either there's not very many places or there are a few different places that you can be used. But yeah, it's going to be interesting to see how that develops throughout the season.
Shedden then tapped De Leon into a spin at Coppice, which took out Chilton and Cook. Chilton had to pit immediately. Cook would have to pit a few laps later. It looked a little bit clumsy from the replays that we've seen. Obviously, as you can probably tell if you're watching us on YouTube, we are sat in a car park in Loughborough, if you're interested, to record this before I go away on my holidays, having let everybody, including myself, down. Yeah, I've not just let you down, I've let myself down, I've let the world down. So yeah, I do apologise. But yeah, I mean, Loughborough's nice.
Yeah, working through it.
Yeah, exactly. Double had to pit, but was able to return. So again, look, it was a race where he clearly was nursing a problem in that car. Not sure what it was. We'll have to wait and see what they say in the week to follow. Ingram managed to use all the chaos unfolding in front of him, get through it unscathed, which was crucial for him. I mean, it'd been a disaster if he'd been caught up in the same way that Chilton had been.
Yeah, I think he just had to sort of like pick a side and hope that a car didn't end up in front of him. Unfortunately, I think De Leon obviously didn't do well with the amount of damage that he suffered, but at least he was able to keep going with the pack, whereas there were, as you say, a couple of other drivers that had to come into the pits because of that.
Yeah, difficult for Chilton. He got back out and they had to pit again with bodywork rubbing, which had either caused a puncture or was likely to cause a puncture. It was difficult to tell because it was on the opposite side to where we were sat.
I can't tell whether Chilton's had a really unlucky weekend or he just hasn't been very quick and therefore he's been caught up in stuff.
I think it's a little from column A, a little from column B. Rowbottom, trying to recover, was up to 12th and Ingram was up to 7th by about the halfway point. So decent efforts from both, and particularly as they had to get through some of the chaos and make sure they didn't get themselves caught up in it as well. And also, as I say, you wouldn't really expect Rowbottom to create the same level of comeback through the field as an Ingram or Sutton because of new car learning bits and pieces. And I don't think it's controversial to say I don't think there's anybody on the level of Sutton and Ingram across the field. I don't think that's controversial.
Not at this stage, especially with the pace that both of them have shown this weekend and their ability to go from literally back to front in one whole race.
Absolutely. Collard would then surrender the lead on lap number 9. He was collared by Sutton, a mistake by Collard into Redgate, ran it wide, and Sutton didn't need a second invitation, did he?
Yeah, he said afterwards that he went to press the brake pedal and it didn't work as well as it should have done, which had him running wide slightly and really opened the door for Sutton to come through.
And it's worth remembering that this is his 5th, 6th time sat in a car, so obviously did a bit of running a media day, did the sessions yesterday, and obviously did the 3 races today. So I mean, Carl's got a lot to learn with that car, and he did a pretty decent job considering what he has to get used to.
Well in that final race, and even when the odds were against him and he ran out of TTB, he was still able to fight with the drivers around him.
Ingram would then get by Patterson on lap 10, putting him into 5th, and a few laps later he'd also passed Moffat at Redgate, which was a real area of action today. Lots of moves set up through there, particularly as you then had the run down the Craners to complete any moves that you needed to. Camish would then get by as well on lap 13 through on Collard. through fighting at Coppice. This followed a lap of side-by-side action, which, to be fair, Collard then held firm, and Ingram got by Camish, and they made it 3x3 for a lap and a half, which was excellent.
They did, yeah. Every time they came round to where we were spectating from, I wasn't quite sure of that group who was going to be in front of the other.
Yep, and then Ingram would get second at Redgate again. Not overly defended by Collard. I mean, commentary said he made it difficult. I mean, he didn't put the indicator on, but
he wasn't defensive, was he?
No, and I had the sad and troubling news on the grid that he potentially has only got funding at this moment in time for half a season. So you don't think team orders will necessarily come in this early in the season. But on the flip side, Ingram's had a terrible race 1 and 2. Got to get points back on the board, and Collard's not going to win the championship hunt.
No, I really do hope that he finds that budget for the second half of the season, and if the offer is there on the table for him to take that, I think it will be beneficial for him, let alone the championship.
Completely agree.
Especially to have that consistency throughout the whole season. And if this weekend's anything to go by, then he certainly looks like he could be a challenging force, shall we say, throughout the season.
Absolutely.
And possibly even surprise a few people.
100%. He's taken a podium earlier than some drivers you'd have nailed your colours to have taken a podium by now. So absolutely. Cook's poor week or bad weekend, whatever you want to term it, carried on, just trundling around, sounding like he'd got an issue with the car and had to pit and basically retire early. So
wasps under the bottom.
Not great.
It didn't sound too healthy.
The marshals and their flags are very, very busy because Ingram was given a final warning for track limits. We've already seen today that not abiding by that warning can be catastrophic, and we're going to get onto that in a moment. Camish was then by on Collard into, you guessed it, Redgate. Good move by Camish, to be fair. He dogged Collard for a couple of laps and then made his move when he could. And then Rainford would get Dexter Patterson down the Craners. Dornan, a bit further back, would end up off the road after a skirmish with Shedden. Say that 3 times fast.
That's about the most exciting thing that has happened in Dorling's weekend, unfortunately.
Yeah, and it's not even for the right reasons.
The Restart Racing boys looked a little off the pace. Smiley looked a lot better in this race.
He did,
but to pass people and challenge and keep it on the road when others weren't. But it's certainly a weekend they'll be looking to improve upon.
Do you expect a penalty to follow for Shedden for that? It looked clumsy, and it looked like his second clumsy incident of the race. I think it's fair to say.
I don't think so. Any penalties and stuff like that, we'll probably clear up at the end of the month with a full news update.
Yes.
Especially as we're recording this one a little ad hoc.
But one penalty we can confirm is that Dan Camish fell foul of the flag. And this is a real podcast with tongue twisters. He fell foul of the flag, track limits, 10-second penalty. I don't know what to say. I repeat what I said in the last bit about Rowbottom and how I think it's quite harsh. Yeah. I also need to understand, and this is my own shortcomings because we've been at the track today, so we haven't got all the information to how they're doing track limits this year, because last year was a shambles to different sessions having different corners and not all corners counted. However, what I will say is that from the graphics we saw on the coverage, which we did see, is that it told you where the track limits were. Yes. So it was turns 1 and whatever. So you'd expect that's for back to the teams. You'd expect them to be on the blower saying, Dan, you've had a warning at corner 7.
I'm pretty sure at the start of the race weekend, when they have that weekend briefing almost, they'll be told where the cameras are going to be, where the track limits are going to be monitored. Yes, okay, we've had this argument before, they should be monitored everywhere, but in the stage of race we are with the touring cars, that's not necessarily possible. But at least we're getting more updates as to where they are being limited.
Budgetary, it's not possible. It is absolutely possible.
Yeah, I know,
it comes down to money. And I get that. And I don't want to say we don't have it at all and just let wildfire erupt.
Yeah.
However, I say I need to work it out. But on the flip side, what I will say is that
we're getting a lot more information about it.
Yeah, and I think Tim said this in commentary as well, is that this is a completely self-induced issue. You can't blame. Well, I tried to make some excuses in race 2 for Rowbottom, but the point is that you will know, and you have been told that you've been given warnings, you've been told what corners it's at, and you just then need to take it slower through there. I know it's very easy for me to sit here and say it, but and it does have catastrophic consequences because a podium finish relegated Camish to 10th.
I know, it's a massive loss of points going from being on the podium that far down.
Yeah.
And you would like to hope that a penalty that is that severe will then make them think a little bit more throughout the season and go, okay, last time this happened, I lost a big chunk of points.
I'll tell you what it does mean is that every car robot and cameras are following at Brands Hatch. They'll be on the blower anytime they overrun down Graham Hill. I'm telling you that now.
That's true. That's true.
Yeah. So I haven't really talked about Ingram in that race because he did it quite quietly. Like we expect him to come through the field. I didn't necessarily expect him to get to second, although Sutton did it earlier. But
the only real incident that he got caught up in was that De Leon one at Coppin.
Yeah.
But he came out of that unscathed and then just made continuous progress.
And I was going to say, unlike Sutton in his recovery drive, Sutton was sort of launching overtakes, whereas Ingram was potentially using the boost a bit smarter and just basically driving around people. There wasn't any sort of side-by-side overtakes, apart from the Dexter one down the craters. The rest was sort of, I think, the Moffat one where it was basically drove around him on the pit lane.
Certainly the ones as they got towards the end of the race, he did have boost left over because he had a full allocation coming from the back. And when you see the cars go past, they've got a little red light to show that they're out of boost for the rest of the race. And he was passing those drivers fairly easily.
Yeah. Right, then I'll quickly round up the classification for that race. And so Sutton won, making it 2 wins and a podium today. Not bad as he started back of the grid at the start of the day. Ingram fought through to second. Ricky Collard taking his podium. Great drive by him to get third. Aidan Moffat, fantastic day of race of him. Really, really consistent.
Brilliant weekend for the Audis as well.
Finishing fourth, and that means he was the independent winner of the that race as well. Then Rainford in fifth, solid by him. Patterson in sixth. So a real solid weekend by Dex as well. Smiley, Morgan, who's been solid in around the lower ends of the top 10 today. And to be fair,
that's spectacular.
But that's a good solid set of results for Plato Racing and Morgan. Osborne in 9th, Camish relegated to 10th. Rowbottom got himself up to 11th with a decent recovery drive, potentially if he was down on power as well. Shedden, Taylor Smith, De Leon and Dorling making the points paying positions. Then Buxton, Selby, Hamilton, Dobble, Cook and Chilton, the final classifieds.
Pretty much all of those towards the back end had issues in that race.
Absolutely. Right, would you like to do predictions first or would you like to do the awards first?
The predictions are fairly cut and shut, so we'll go through those first of all.
Wicked. Okay, so you got the no, you didn't get the poll prediction right in the end because it was taken off him, so I need to change that, unfortunately for you, because it wasn't Ingram. It wasn't Ingram on poll. Yes, it was.
Yes, it was.
Okay. See, the confusing nature
you confused me as well.
Sorry, the confusing nature of the Saturday has confused me. Right, so you've got
the qualifying session.
Let's start that again.
Ingram was fastest.
Yes, the overall poll for the qualifying session, you have got a point for Ingram being fastest.
I have, yes. However, he did not win the race to pole.
No.
Which was won by Rowbottom because of Ingram's misdemeanors.
Yeah. So that means that neither of us get a point for that, which means that, because I went for Sutton for the sprint to pole.
Yep.
In terms of race winners, I have got 1 point here. Yeah, I went for Ingram, which didn't come through. Well, he won on the road, but he lost it in the stewards' room, and we go on the final classification results. I went for Gordon Shedden, which it looked like it might be possible at a point, but then it fell away a little bit. And I went for Sutton, who, of course, won races 2 and 3. Sorry, I only get 1 point though because I have to have said Sutton twice if I wanted multiple race wins. You went for Ingram, Camish, and Cook, so fairly cut and dry. Not really, apart from you're slightly unlucky on the Ingram one, to be fair.
Yeah, I think so.
In terms of the Jack Sears, you've won that hands down.
I did much better there.
I went for James Dorling. You went for Dex Patterson. I think Dex won all 3.
I think Dex won all 3 as well.
Yeah, you've smashed out the park, and so is Dex. To be fair, fantastic drive by him.
Weekend.
And then we go to the Generales, and it's a clean sweep for me, which I'm really happy with because I struggled in this championship last year, and there's a long way to go. I've made a big point today about not getting carried away by a few results, and there's a long way to go. And there'll be teething issues and there'll be setbacks, and this is exactly what I expect to see throughout the season. But we'll cover yours first because you didn't have such a good day. Tom's to outscore WSR, I need to do a steward's inquiry on. Pending, and we'll confirm that on the Brands preview.
The WSR boys didn't have a brilliant final race.
No.
But nor did Chilton.
No.
So we'll see how that goes. And there will be we'll update you in the preview. Yeah,
and Ingram obviously won, didn't win a race, so I got second, but had 2 non-starts. So I actually don't think you're going to have done that because Ingram with 2 non-fit finishes. Right. But we will check it in the stewards' room afterwards, and we'll update. No. You had neither Sutton or Ingram to lead the championship on Sunday evening.
Yeah, I didn't see.
I don't think anyone did.
Sutton doing what he's done today.
No, that is fair enough. Although, to be fair, had Ingram not had his problems, he'd have probably been in Sutton's position. So it was a bit bold.
I know.
But you did get an Audi top 6 finish. You got that in every single race. So,
I know.
yeah, you can't argue that. Great result for you. Great result for Audi.
Wow. Yeah. And then you mopped up, shall we say?
Yeah, let's say that. So we had, for me, the sprint race winner. That was this race to pole victory thing. Rowbottom doesn't win a race on Sunday. So
definitely didn't.
I had 3 different independent winners. So we had, by my reckoning, Rainford, Shedden and Moffat today as the 3. Sorry, Doble. Apologies, Doble, Shedden and Moffat as the 3 independents today.
Quite possibly. It was definitely 3 different ones.
Yeah, well, Shedden finished 3rd in race 3. Yeah, so, yeah. And I had a tie to podium, which Shedden did claim for me in race number 2.
Yes.
Which was good.
You've done well there.
So provisionally, I am potentially 4-3, more likely 4-2.
Yeah. 4-2 I'll take.
No, actually, no. It's 4-3, absolutely. It could be 4-2. Because I got 1 right, you got 2 right. So it's 2-1 there.
Got 2 there, yeah.
So it's potentially 4 all. However, I think it's 4-3. I don't think the Toms have done it, mate.
Agreed. Now, the most important part of the weekend.
Yes, the point where we get to anger everybody.
Our awards.
Yes.
Now, if you haven't watched before, we give out awards, 4 awards, isn't it? For the weekend. We give out a driver of the weekend. Was driver of the day, but
it's got to be weekend now.
It's got to be weekend now. We give a villain of the weekend. You don't want to be winning that one. We give a surprise good and a surprise bad.
Yeah.
Where do you want to start?
Should we start with the surprises and work upwards to
yes,
makes a change? Surprise bad is fairly cut and dry for me. It's Restart Racing. They were nowhere near the pace on the Saturday. I know Smiley did all right in race 3, but effectively they were good in 1 of 5 sessions that counted, and that's not good enough. Dorlin wasn't particularly on the pace day either. It just felt that they were at a bit of a disadvantage all weekend.
I'm probably going to have to go for Chilton.
Okay.
Yeah, he had sort of like a decent result, a 9th, I think, in race 1, but apart from that, nowhere.
No. Well,
I really either combination of unlucky, bad luck,
bad luck,
mistakes.
Yeah.
However you want to call it, it's not the weekend he was after, especially with the note how we know the pace is in that car, and Collard showed it as well.
Yeah, absolutely. No, I can completely understand that. Surprise good?
Oh, I think it has to be PMR.
Yeah, I'm agreeing with you on that. I agree with you on that.
It was all very well seeing them go quickly in testing.
Yep.
But we were a little unsure bringing a new car to the grid, an independent team that is up in the stakes this year, effectively bringing 3 brand new cars in. And they've smashed it.
Yeah, absolutely.
From this first weekend, they smashed it.
100%. And look, maybe we've been a bit guilty of underestimating them coming into the season, but it's so hard for the reasons you just said there. You've got 3 new cars, completely new to 3 drivers. 2 of them are new to the team.
Yep.
Yeah, there's a lot of new bits and pieces there. Dare I say as well, there'll be a new setup or new feeling inside because they've now changed dynamic where they've got 3 top drivers. I don't think they've had that. I don't think they've had it this good before. Put it that way. They've had 3 drivers in the past. I don't think we've seen a level like this before. With race winners, a real prospect.
Moving into new headquarters, having to set up effectively completely new for this season. Yes, okay, the team personnel are there. They know what they've been doing for the last 3, 4, 5 years. But it's a big ask to bring in a 100%. Car into the championship, and 3 of them.
Yeah, 100%. They've done really well this weekend, and I completely agree with you. I might, if I was to, for a bit of variety, change that to my surprise good being Dexter Patterson as just because I think he exceeded all expectations this weekend. However, that's only for a slight point of difference. PMR smashed it. Yeah, 100%.
I understand that. Your villain then?
For similar reasons you already mentioned, I've gone for Tom Chilton. I think that a lot of hype was going into the season around Tom Chilton and how he was expecting to really be challenging, and the car was good.
I've been on there as well.
yeah. You have been on that hype train. And look, one bad weekend does not ruin a season, does not change everything and make you a bad driver.
Help,
exactly, that doesn't help though. And I just think today, what we've always said about teams at the top of motorsport is that if your main driver has a bad day, you've really got to be there to pick up the pieces and do your bit. We've said that about Red Bull for years in F1 world. And today, Ingram had that day where it didn't go particularly well. Okay, race 1, Ingram won, and you couldn't have possibly known what was coming. Fine.
I've got a good question for you. Keep going.
Okay. Race 2 didn't really affect it. Race 3, yes, I know he gets caught up in stuff, but as you say, is that bad luck? Is it also because you're at that part of the grid? Really, Chilton was nowhere near the top 4 all weekend, and that I know Camish hasn't had a great weekend on paper, but he was closer to the sharp end throughout the weekend where you'd expect him to be. What's your question? If
Proctor's still in that car,
that's the question, isn't it?
Does he finish like top 6 most every race?
It's really hard to know because obviously we don't. It is a hypothetical question. What I will say is that I've been watching On the Limit recently, trying to catch up with that. And if you haven't watched it, go back and watch it, because the part he plays in Ingram's victory last year, okay, he's not the sole reason Ingram won the championship. Let's not get carried away. But
it's a big part.
Yeah, though. He really did play his part last year. He really was a pain in the arse for Ingram's competitors.
He was nicking points off of them. He was making races difficult. He was
holding people up,
doing that team job of letting Ingram through when he needed to.
And dare I say as well, and this is going to sound like a diss to Chilton, and it's not, but if you are Sutton or you're anyone else in the title fight and you're trying to get past one of Ingram's teammates, I'd rather go past Chilton than I would Proctor.
Yeah. Dare I say, and it might only be for half season, as we've already mentioned, Collard could be his main ally in that respect, because we know what kind of racer he's going to be. We know how hard he's going to fight. We know he's going to put the cat amongst the pigeons and be there to ruffle a few feathers.
And I think as well, and I'll let you get your villain out in a minute, this has been sort of Chilton's problem since he's been at Virtue, is that there's too many of these weekends.
Yep.
And it's already happened at the start of the season. Again, okay, get out of the way and maybe have 9 great ones moving forward. We don't, this looks silly at the end of the season, like so many of the things I say. But again, watching back through On the Limit last year, there were so many weekends. Actually, we discussed it in the pre-season predictions about there'll be a weekend where the car's just on fire or he's just doing nothing, because that's kind of where we are. And it looks as if, okay, it's one weekend, let's not get too carried away. But it does look like that pattern is already setting in. And I've just been a bit disappointed.
Especially at a track that we know he's gone well at before.
Exactly. Did really well here at the season opener last year, took a race win.
I'm now going to take out a note of your book.
Oh dear. Never do that.
My villain is TTB this weekend.
Oh, you've gone for
I have. I've gone for the championship. The slight change that we've had to the TTB this weekend looks like it's making passes a little bit too easy in my mind. Effectively, as you've already said, like a push to pass, a DRS sort of thing. Yes, okay, that makes for overtakes and excitement and stuff like that, and you have to be able to use it tactically, to use it properly. But also the amount of times that we've seen a slightly contradicting information with the race to pole on Saturday. We had explanation from the commentators going, it should adjust itself across a lap and stuff like that. I don't understand how a program or a software system basically like that can over boost. There must be an upper limit that should be set, and I don't know whether this is teams doing it or whether it's the system itself, whether it's Cosworth, whether it's M Sport. I don't fully know, which is why I'm a little bit squiffy on it. But the amount of issues that it's caused this weekend for drivers, Morgan, Ingram, drivers being able to be passed and defend a little bit easier. I want to see pure fighting.
Yeah, no, I completely agree with you, and I've said to you before that I'm a little bit nervous about how gimmicky the sport might be being perceived as getting, and this one is. I don't like the 5 seconds, as we discussed a bit further up. I think that takes away all tactical skill in when you use it, when you don't. I think it's now become, as you've mentioned, and I've mentioned, DRSC, which Formula 1 needed DRS, and this is just debate for another time, but Formula 1 needed DRS at the time. It wasn't the perfect solution, but it was necessary. Whereas I don't think this is necessary in the touring cars. I do think that the boost is too powerful, and we're going to see it at some tracks where if you've not got TTB, you're not going to compete. As simple as that. And
I do wonder whether it contributed to Doble falling way through the field in that second race,
it's quite
because
possibly.
he only had 2 laps to deal with it and wasn't able to.
No, and I suppose people will be shouting at the screen or at the thing right now, but Sutton won race 3 with only 1 lap. But then I think that if Sutton and Ingram do something, you have to take them out of the conversation, because what they do is just
freakish.
Yeah, they are. Yeah. Honestly, probably the best 2 drivers of well, I'm going to say they are the best two drivers of my lifetime. I think they're ahead of Matt Neal and Jason Plater in terms of what they can get out of a car every single weekend. So I think whatever they do, put them away. I suppose the only driver that might come close is Giovinazzi. Again, a debate for a whole other day. But the point being, if they do it, that is not the norm. That is absolutely the exception. Okay, cool. Should we do driver of the weekend?
Driver of the weekend, then.
It's Sutton. I know he. I know he had the bad Saturday, but do you know what the mark of a great driver is? How you deal with setbacks. And boy, oh boy, did he show how to deal with setback today on the Sunday.
And dare I say, if you're going to have a setback across a weekend, you'd rather on Saturday when there's only a maximum of 10 points to be lost out on. Should we say?
He'll struggle if he does that next weekend though, because you have no boost at the back of the grid for race one. But what I will say is that he made the most of what he had today, and he's gone home with 2 firsts and a second.
Yeah,
not bad. Not bad, is it? I think he might have taken that at the start of the day had you offered it to him.
Definitely.
So yeah, I mean, I think there is a few honourable mentions. I will put Dex in the conversation. I think he's had a really strong weekend.
Moffat.
I'll put Moffat in the conversation. I'd be tempted to put Rainford in the conversation as well.
Yeah.
But I'd say they've been solid rather than spectacular.
Yes, agreed.
Sutton has just been spectacular.
Yeah.
And Ingram would have definitely been in with a shout, but yeah, when you don't start one of the races, okay, it's not your fault. I understand that, but you know, it's you can't pass Sutton in my opinion.
I know. Well, that kind of rounds up a weekend of racing. A little bit chilly at the track today, and you might see that we've caught the wind slightly.
Well, not for me. I'm bathed in sunshine here, so I'm fine.
But yeah, certainly a good, strong opening to the 2026 season. It'll be interesting to see what comes in 2-3 weeks' time at Brands. And it is a completely different setup of track, so I think we are going to get a different bag of results, which will be quite nice. Apart from Ingram and Sutton probably still being up there.
I mean,
thoughts?
Well, I've put 5 quick fire thoughts on Facebook for how the weekend went. So if you're interested in those in a bit of a longer sort of read, by all means, go and check them out and give us yours. My thoughts are, pretty much that is that the championship never went away. Sutton and Ingram are absolutely at the level that I don't think anyone's going to get near this season. Nope. But what I will say is that whilst people might already be going, another battle between those two, the quality of racing in the rest of the field today was excellent. We really did see some great racing up and down the field, and even to the point where drivers that had fallen off the leading pack and were fighting at the back, they'll still be able to fight with each other. There was still lots of scrapping. There was still lots of changing of positions. Yeah. So yeah, if that's an indication of what's to come, I think that we will be in for a good season. I will also just say that there's been a few sarky comments to me about Plato Racer throughout the podcast. It is purely just because of some of the just jabbing back a bit at some of the negative comments that we received for daring to criticise Plato Racing. But I do think that if you're honest, being realistic and taking all joke out of it for a minute, they've had a solid start to the weekend. If you'd offered them at the start of this weekend before Wheeler turned, the sprint to pole victory and then solid point scoring, Plato probably wouldn't say it on the service because he wants to win everything, but I think there'd have been an acceptance in the team that is a good result, and I think they have had a good start to the season.
Well, Brands next up.
We're going.
We are going. Let us know your thoughts on the weekend. We'd love to hear them, as we've heard them all across social media this weekend.
Might go book a holiday for after Brands as well.
But yeah, we'll bring you a news update at the end of the month as well. But until then.
Yep. Cheerio. Hope you enjoyed the curtain raiser, and we'll be back with a Brands preview after the news update as well. So and also thank you for sticking with us for this episode. I appreciate that it's not necessarily as, I say, smooth and polished as we normally are.
I've got to edit this when I get home.
Yeah, I mean, good luck to that. But yeah, thank you for sticking with us. If it's your first time listening to a review, they're not all like this. They are generally a bit better quality, and that's on me. I've let the nation down.
Until next time, we'll see you soon.
Bye for now.